Fagins Children by Peter Graham, from the short story collection Whispers from the Edge 1, published by Onion Relish Media, read by David Angus MacDonald. The sun, having reached the zenith, was now at its hottest. Soon it would begin the long descent to the eastern horizon. Across the scorched landscape below trudged two tiny figures. The leader, taller by a full head and shoulders, turned and quietly waited while the second caught up. "Are you all right, Rodent? You had no trouble keeping up with me yesterday." Rodent looked up towards her companion. Her eyes searched the dark shadow beneath his broad-brimmed hat for some sign of anger or frustration. His face remained hidden, and she gave up the attempt. "I'm sorry, Dixon, but we haven't eaten in 2 days, and I drank the last of my water ration 2 hours ago. I'm doing the best I can." Dixon stepped closer and clasped her shoulders. "I'm the one who should be sorry, Rodent. Fagin told me to look after you. I should have paid you better attention." With one hand still clasped on her shoulder, he turned and pointed. "Look ahead, there between the mountains and where we now stand. Do you see a faint line across the ground?" Rodent peered through the heat haze and nodded willingly. "That's the old riverbed. We'll find some nourishment there. Then it will only be another day's walk before we rejoin Fagin." He passed her his canteen of water. "But I've had my water for the day." "Don't worry, we'll be home before we empty this one." Rodent gulped the fluid gratefully. "You've done very well, Rodent. Fagin was right to choose you, but then he always is." After a hard day's walking, they were home. They had seen it in the distance as they walked. 3 towers, each surmounted by an enormous radio dish, like an outcrop of strange alien flowers eagerly drinking in the sun. As their bulk shimmered in the heat, Rodent had wondered if she would fail within their sight, so great was her fatigue. She sensed rather than felt the support of Dixon's arm as she struggled, like an exhausted swimmer, for the safety of the shore. It was a goal that seemed to get no closer, no matter how hard she tried. Then, as if suddenly swept up by the surf and thrown onto the safety of the beach, Rodent was being helped in through the door of the main control building. Inside its shelter, the air felt cool and fresh. She heard liquid being dispensed, and then Dixon was helping her drink from a cup of cool, clean water.
"Slowly, Rodent. Drink it slowly or you'll make yourself ill."
It was Fagin's voice, or rather the mechanical manifestation of his voice. She had the impression that he was smiling, although she knew he could not smile.
"Did you get it, Dixon?"
Fagin asked. "Yes, Fagin. We found the cards exactly where you told us they'd be. I brought all 5 in case any were faulty."
"Good, very good. Now, Dixon, put one in the slot in the middle of my data panel. That's right, just there. Ah, excellent. You have done well, Dixon, you and Rodent. I'm proud of you both. I've known hardened convicts who wouldn't have shown as much courage. Now both of you must rest. You've earned it. Get your strength back. I will look after you now."
Within the protection of the control room, Rodent found her bunk and fell into a fitful and dream-ridden sleep, haunted by recurring images. The large building full of children. It was the first place she could remember. The older girl that tried to protect her from the adults and other inmates. Was that her sister? Escaping in the dead of night after the man had tried to do something to the older girl, and then beat both of them in frustration. Living on the streets, her sister dying of the sickness, being found by the gang while she was competing with the rats for food in the trash. Was that when she got her name? In her dream, Dixon led the gang, but it wasn't Dixon. It was Mystic. They were very alike. "Someone's got to look after her," he had said against the protests of the other gang members. She had burst into tears then. She cried for her sister, for all the hurts she could no longer remember, and most of all because someone had been kind to her. "No!" she screamed out. "Stop it! Leave him alone!" The policemen were laughing, taking it in turns to hit Mystic with their sticks, comparing their different techniques. After the first few blows, Mystic stopped crying out and began to whimper like a dog. Then he just lay still while the policeman continued to laugh and beat him. Wrecker held her and kept his hand tight over her mouth so she wouldn't reveal their hiding place. "You can't help him! You can't help him!" he whispered over and over again. She saw that he was crying too, tears washing pale streaks on his dirty face. They were running then, scattering before the trawlers, municipal pest controllers determined to clear the city of the feral children. She felt again the fear that only the hunted could know. Struggling in the net, the trawlers stood around her laughing. There was the tiny courtroom with an overworked judge who was processing that night's catch of children. "Guilty of vagrancy, sentenced to off-world deportation," followed by the thud of his stamp. This was repeated again and again as each child filtered through the room. She saw her new home for the first time as a red glowing disk in the blackness of space. It stared back at her.
"You've been having bad dreams again, haven't you, Rodent?"
One of Fagin's glow-red camera eyes was looking at her. "Yes," was all that Rodent was able to say.
"I often regret not being able to dream. I don't need to now, of course. All the same, it's something I would like to be able to do. Still, I might have bad dreams like you do, Rodent. Perhaps because I'm older, they'd be far worse. It's a very human thing, though, dreaming."
The glow in the camera that had been watching her dimmed. She was alone again, though not completely alone, not like she'd been before. The sounds of the other children going for their breakfast filtered through to her. Some of the younger ones were playing. The hardship of their life here would soon put a stop to that, she thought ruefully. Rodent's mind wandered back to her dreams. She remembered the silver globe that used to light the night sky of her earliest memories. She missed its comfort during the moonless nights of this world. Something else had invaded that sky in the last few months, something that had agitated Fagin considerably. A comet, he had called it, but would say no more. Instead, he had sent her and Dixon on a raid that had nearly cost them their lives. A raid to get the cards that had enabled him to break the boundaries of his allocation and allow him to reactivate the great radio dishes above them. Whatever he was up to, she knew it was something to do with that comet. "Do you want some breakfast, Rodent?" Dixon moved into her line of vision. "There's dried fruit and biscuits, and some coffee as a special treat from Fagin." Rodent nodded and rubbed her eyes. With breakfast finished, Fagin spoke to them again. They sat behind a redundant set of manual controls that moved as if haunted by their own ghosts.
"Dixon, I want you and Rodent to organize the other children into scouting parties. Have them look for the usual things, tools, rations, spares, but get them to keep a special lookout for any protective clothing. The sort that would keep water out."
Rodent and Dixon looked at each other, but neither dared question his judgment.
"In a little while I'm going to take control of one of the transceivers, so don't be alarmed if one of them moves. I'll be responsible. It means I won't be able to help if one of you gets into trouble, so take extra care. Be sure everyone prods the shadow with a pole before picking up anything. You both know the sort of things that live there."
The children nodded together in the direction of the camera. "Fagin, what are you going to do?" Dixon shot her a stern look for asking the question.
"Thanks to you and Dixon, I'm able to reactivate this planet's defenses, in particular the gravity mines. I intend to use them to direct the comets towards us and then break it up into a cloud of tiny particles."
"But why?" This time it was Dixon who'd forgotten himself.
"Because that comet is composed of the water that was taken from this world, and I intend to return it."
With that, the camera was switched off, and the two children were left in stunned silence.